Good morning, Flagler County. This is Danielle Anderson, your host of Lifeline, the radio show connecting you to positivity in our community. And we have a super positive guest in the studio today. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning, Danny. So nice to be here.
Thank you for coming. I just can't even wait to dive into this. It's such a great story. And so for people who haven't met you yet, can you tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I'm retired currently, but I was in the software business. In the 80s, everybody in Atlanta thought I invented the ATM machine, which I don't even know how to use.
I thought you were going to say they invented the internet.
No, I didn't. Certainly didn't do that, not with the 750 SAT. But one of our software products was for the ACH, which stands for the Automated Clearinghouse. And that's really what put my company on the map.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was introduced in 1975, and there were two software companies that had solutions. Mine, which was the best, and one other out of Boston. Yeah.
So the amazing thing about Larry is I was able to do a story for Ormond Beach Living, and in the process, we learned about his book. If you guys here are looking at our Facebook Live, you can see his book, and it really starts here with the SAT book, which is Larry's early days. And it's a fascinating story when you talk about, and he's so modest. He talks about, where you came from and your schooling and things like that. So tell him a little bit about growing up in Georgia.
Okay, I grew up in southwest Atlanta in a 4-room house with no indoor toilet. We had an outhouse and played all 3 sports in high school. Went to Georgia Tech on a 750 SAT, which nobody knows how I got accepted, which is part of the title of my book. And I've written a book. It's a Christian book to encourage young people to do their best regardless of their SAT score. My neighbor said I make a good poster child for the below average student. I'll take that.
So, what made you decide you wanted to go to Georgia Tech?
Well, we had a senior night in high school, and a Georgia Tech visitor was the keynote speaker, and I was really impressed. And I just decided I'd like to go to Georgia Tech. It's in Atlanta, and it was driving distance. I couldn't afford to live on campus, although I did play baseball at Georgia Tech, but I didn't go on a scholarship. So I had no clue that my 750 SAT score should have eliminated me. As a matter of fact, I laugh and say that I think the lady that was in charge of applications got confused and put my application in the accept pile instead of the reject pile. But I got out in 12 quarters. I graduated in the top third of my class. I made the dean's list the last 4 quarters I was there. And my total tuition for Georgia Tech for all 12 quarters was $986. So you're talking about value for your education. I got that for sure at Tech. Tech taught me discipline. I worked so hard to get out of that place. I never minded working hard after that.
So did you know that you wanted to go into the software industry, or how did that become your thing?
I didn't know what software was. I didn't know what an entrepreneur was either. I went to work at the Federal Reserve Bank as a programmer out of Georgia Tech, even though I took no programming classes. And went to work from there, another software company in Atlanta called Management Science America for 3 years. And that's really where I developed my love and interest in software.
And you're really kind of like a self-made, self-taught person.
Very much so. I borrowed $500 from my 2-year-old son to start my company, and that's the only money we ever borrowed. We took the company public in 1984, and it was sold to NYNEX Corporation, which is now Verizon, in 1990.
Wow.
That allowed me to build my home in Atlanta. I needed liquidity to do that. Every time I tried to sell 1,000 shares, the stock would go down $1.
Oh, no. So we have to talk about that, but I do want to we'll talk about your amazing home, because it's really spectacular. But talking about the company culture, because I think that's one of the things that's been most impressive to me, because I have a leadership column on Flagler News Weekly, and it's a brilliant gentleman who does that column, Dr. Saviak. But, leadership is so important, and people forget what company culture and leadership is really, truly about.
Absolutely. I wanted to create a company that I would enjoy working for. So we had company motto that came out of the Bible, "You that be greatest, let them be servant of all," which is also my favorite definition of success. Company goal was to be the best software company in the business as measured by overall customer satisfaction, which we did achieve with one of our products. But what made SSI so unique is the corporate culture. We dress casual. This began in 1971 and did business with the largest banks and corporations in the country. I ended up starting the company in my home. We bought another house that was zoned commercial. We bought an office building, and then we bought the old Simmons Simmons Mattress corporate headquarters on the river in Norcross, Georgia, which was a beautiful campus. What made it unique is the corporate culture. We had the best benefits of any company I've ever seen in my life, including profit sharing, pension, 401k, bonuses, company outings. I took the entire company to Rio de Janeiro one year for 7 days. So it was a fun place to work, and I wanted to create an environment where people would stay there. We served everybody breakfast and lunch every day, and it was free. And one of my joys was my dad, Big Daddy. I talked into coming to cook lunch for my employees back in the 70s. He made the best fried chicken in the Southeast, which by definition means the world. Everybody loved Big Daddy's fried chicken. So it was a fun place to work and virtually no turnover. We had 23 husband and wife teams that worked in the company. It was like a family. In the Simmons building, they had a corporate cafeteria where everybody ate together. It wasn't for the big shots here and the peons there. We all ate together. It was like a family. And like I say, the breakfast and lunch was free. So,
we don't have a lot of that kind of company culture today. You really don't see. It's more really of, the white collar folks here and then the blue collar folks here.
Yeah.
How do you think we could make America better like that?
Well, in my case, it was a natural thing to do. Like I said, I'm having a mental block. I interviewed everybody we hired. I'm the only person in the company when I retired in 1994 that knew everybody by name. And that's because I interviewed everybody. I wasn't the first step in the interview process. I was the last step. And if you walked in my office, I'd say, "Hi, Danny, I'm Larry Dean. I'm president, founder of the company. And my job today is try to scare you off." And you see the little wheels turning in their heads like, "I didn't expect this." So I talk about our company motto, talk about our company goal. And I tell them, I said, "I don't care where you went to school. I don't care what your degree was. I don't care where you worked." I said, "What I care about is your attitude." So I hired people with good attitudes. And I told them, I said, "When that phone rings, you pick it up and say, 'Hi, this is Larry Dean. How can I help you?' Not, 'Hey, dummy, that's on page 26 of the documentation.'" So it's an attitude thing. And like I say, we had just great people, and that made it a very fun place to work.
How do you think, we could teach the next generation that is so important to have that personal touch?
I don't know. I published a book trying to encourage them to do that. So I did my best.
You did. You really did a good job. And then by having people that wanted to be there and work with you for all those years, it sounds like it was a great place to be.
It was, and I was a good boss.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so. My book, by the way, the story about my book, I wrote a book. What happened, my oldest son went to a college in Memphis that he wanted to go to, and it was a liberal arts college. They were very impressed with him. At the end of the interview, they asked him, said, "Chris, by the way, what did you score on your SAT?" He said 950, and I'm thinking the kid's brilliant, right, because I scored 750. And the guy said, "Oh, I should ask you earlier." He said, "You can't come here unless you score at least 1,000. They wrote him a reject letter, which we expected. The second paragraph said, "We don't think you can compete in our classrooms," which you're talking about pouring salt in a wound. You already rejected the kid. Don't, discourage him. My youngest son was rejected by Sewanee University, which is a great school because my granddaughter went there. But they wrote him the most uplifting letter. So you're very qualified. We wish you could accept. We just have so many opportunities, and we can't accept you. That's the uplifting letter that a school should write a kid. Well, first of all, like I say, my whole problem is with the SAT. It's fine to score well on the SAT, but there are a lot of kids that don't. And if I'd have known when I scored 750 that it wasn't good, I certainly wouldn't have set my goals to go to Georgia Tech. My self-esteem would have already been destroyed. So I was very blessed not to have that in my mind that I couldn't make it. I didn't know. Georgia Tech taught me discipline. Like I say, I worked so hard to get out of that place. I learned discipline.
And I think that's really what it comes down to, work ethic and discipline and
I agree totally.
Being a team player.
Yeah.
So exactly. You did go back and take the SAT again, didn't you?
Yes, I did. It's one of the chapters in my book. I went with my youngest son in my white pants to take the SAT, and I'm sure those kids looked at me and said, "What's that old dude doing here taking the SAT?" But the second time, I scored 1190, which was better. I scored 650 in math after scoring 500 initially, and that impressed even me. Well, I scored 250 in verbal the first time, and they give you 200 for signing your name. In my book, I said, I hope I forgot to. Second time, I scored 540, which is not too good. Here I have a BIE degree from Georgia Tech, an MBA degree from Georgia State, president, CEO of a public software company. If I can't score better than 540 in verbal, something's wrong with verbal.
That's right.
This time I knew all the vocabulary words. That wasn't the problem. It was the comprehensive. And I mentioned earlier that I put E, which is either none of the above or all of the above, about 70% of the time.
So don't do that at home, kids.
Yeah. But anyway, the SAT's fine. It's fine to be smart. You still got to do something with your life. And my expectations when I graduated from Georgia Tech were to someday make $1,500 a month at the Federal Reserve Bank, which is a good and worthwhile goal. It's just God had bigger plans for me than I had for myself.
And your company went on to be very successful.
Oh, yeah. We like I said, had the best reputation in the software business. We were the first software company to introduce user meetings. A lot of people wouldn't do that because they thought there'd be gripe sessions, but it's the best thing we ever did. We instituted a concept where our users would meet together. And they loved it because they could share information and give us guidance as to what they would like us to do. So it became very successful. And now I think just about all software companies have user meetings. But we started it.
How does it make you feel to be a pioneer in an industry like that?
Wonderful. Like I say, I didn't know what an entrepreneur was, and I still can't spell it. But as the plaque says, R1.
Don't worry, I got you covered.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about what Larry did with all of that fun money he had to play around with and how he created something that was really, truly magical for the state of Georgia. So we'll be right back.
Don't even think about climbing that ladder.
We got a guy that'll do it for you.
If you're going to do it right with Benjamin Moore.
We've got the professional painters and the best paint.
Benjamin Moore, corner of Old Kings and Utility Drive.
Palm Coast.
Thank you so much for recommending us to your family and friends. When you need a 30, 60, or 90-minute massage, it's real easy to book your appointment online. MassageByNatalie.org. MassageByNatalie.org.
We are back with Larry Dean, and not only is he a super whiz in the software industry, he is also a surprising creative. I didn't know about the second part of your life that just you were doing. Was it simultaneously when you had the company that you were building this home in Georgia?
No, we went public in 84, and every time I tried to sell 1,000 shares, the market would go down to $1 because they thought I was bailing out. So one of my employees' fiance was a student at Harvard in their MBA program. He wrote a case study about my company, and he said there are three options for Dean to consider. One is to grow more aggressively to please Wall Street, because our stock went public at 9, and 4 years later it was selling at 6, even though we had earnings growth from 22 cents to 92 cents, no debt, $4 a share in the bank in cash.
Wow.
So we just weren't getting rewarded for our performance. So that was one option. Option two was to take the company private, buy the stock back at $8 a share, and in 3 years take it public again and make Dean even wealthier. That wasn't an option that I did. I needed liquidity. And the third option was to sell the company. We sold the company to NYNEX, which is now Verizon, in 1990. And I could sell my entire holding. And I became their largest individual shareholder. I could sell my entire holding in one day.
Wow.
That's how liquid it was. So it solved my problems. When I went to Harvard, I was in 2 classes, and I used to lecture all the time in the entrepreneur classes at Georgia Tech and at colleges all over the Southeast and churches. And on the secret to success was my definition of my speech. When I got to Harvard for the case study, the first hour, the students were summarizing my company and making recommendations for what we should do. It was no surprise to me that 95% of the class said, take the company private at $8 a share and take it public again in 3 years. That is, make Dean wealthier. And, of course, when he turned it over to me, I told him, I said, I got people in my Sunday school class that bought this stock at $9 a share 6 years ago. Are they going to be happy with me buying it back at $8 a share? No. I've got employees that have $8 stock options, so if I bought it back at $8 a share, they get nothing. Are they going to be happy? No. The only person that could potentially be happy was me. And I told them we sold to NYNEX Corporation for $15.18. It was a tax-free exchange. So people that bought the shares 6 years ago eventually got some return on their investment. People that bought it yesterday for $6.50 were ecstatic. But everybody was happy. Employees got their $8 stock options worth $7.15, 18 cents each. So they were happy. I was happy. I got liquidity. So I laugh and say the Harvard MBA stands for me beyond anybody else.
Oh, wow.
Hate to say that, but it was true. Second class, so well, the professor wanted me to do the whole class, the second class after lunch. I said, oh, no. I said, they didn't learn, they wouldn't learn anything if they turned it over to me. Second class, same way. 95% of the class said, take the company private and take it public again in 3 years, make Dean wealthy. Who cares about anybody else?
No, but you had bigger plans in your heart.
I absolutely did. And, it's interesting. 80% of both classes asked me for jobs once the speech was over. So that went very well. But I was used to lecturing on the secret to success. And by the way, the secret to success is to realize there are a lot of good definitions of success, and what you got to do is pick and choose the one that applies to you. My personal favorite comes out of the Bible, was my company motto, you that would be greatest, let him be servant of all. There's nothing more welcoming than anybody with a servant spirit.
That's right. It makes a difference.
Absolutely.
And not just like in your own life, but in the lives of everyone that you're around.
Okay, once I got the liquidity.
Here it is.
Here it is. Actually, I started my home, which was called Dean Gardens. It was, at the time, the largest home in Georgia. We were inspired by the Butchart Gardens of Victoria, Canada, and the Bellingrath Gardens of Mobile, Alabama. And my wife and I wanted to build a home and a garden that would eventually be open to the public with the proceeds going to charity. My spiritual gift's giving, so I wanted to do something to give back to the community. We had an 18-hole par 72 golf course in the front yard on about 20 acres. There were 5 greens, 9 tee boxes, and 18 different holes. It was designed by Joe Gale, who did Kenny Rogers' estate. And people thought it was a little par 3, and I had one hole that was 600 yards long. I said, if you can get there in 3, go for it. Then we had on one side a Japanese garden with a tea house, a koi pond, and a red bridge. On the other side of the estate was a azalea garden. We had 10,000 azaleas on a hillside. In the backyard, there was an Italian garden terracing down the side of the hill, big Neptune fountain where we did a bunch of functions. I had 91 weddings at Dean Gardens and 75 charitable fundraisers.
Oh, wow.
And then you traveled on the other side of the Neptune fountain was the French garden. And then the trellises have wisteria, the rose garden, and then a conservatory. We had an amphitheater that was patterned after Daytona's bandshell.
Oh, wow.
Amphitheater. It was just like it.
That's so cool.
And a grass tennis court, one of only 2 in the state of Georgia, and a hard surface tennis court. And then beyond the formal gardens was a lake we built. We were on the Chattahoochee River. We pumped water from the lake, river to the lake, and they were irrigated out of the lake. We built a wedding chapel in the lake that was inspired by one in Kauai, seated 150 people. So even though we had a lot of weddings in the wedding chapel, most people wanted to get married in the gardens.
They're so beautiful. I've seen pictures. They're just absolutely stunning.
Thanks. Yeah, Joe Gale designed the gardens. He did a great job. The architect for the home was Bill Harrison, who was probably Atlanta's most famous architect. He's now deceased. But my oldest son, Chris, at age 21, did all the interior design of the home. And you can tell he takes after his mom because she plays the piano by ear. I have no gifts of vision. I'm a visionary, but no vision. So they had to show me renderings of what each room in the house was going to look like. But he did a fantastic job. I've appeared on Lifestyles of Rich and Famous, HGTV's Mega Mansions. The most fun one was Joan Rivers' How'd You Get So Rich?
That is so cool. I mean, Joan Rivers.
It was a great segment, and everybody loved her, and she loved the estate, wrote Chris a personal note of how beautiful it was, but that was my personal favorite. We didn't rehearse anything. She just showed up at the front door, and I said, Joan Rivers.
You're like, wow.
Because I've got a keen sense of humor anyway, and so it went very well.
What inspired you to want to build this tremendous estate?
I think it was nightmares.
Was it really?
No, it was overall fun, but if I had to do it over again, I wouldn't. The reason I wouldn't, we tried to get it zoned agricultural to open it to the public. I didn't need a commercial zoning. Unfortunately, we had, when we were building the house, the Atlanta paper Constitution Journal came out on the front page in living color Sunday, biggest house in Atlanta. And the article was tacky. Oh. And part of the problem was the article said the deans are having an open house and everybody is invited. Well, that's only partial true. That was for a charity where they were charging $30 to come tour the house and the gardens. We had 5,000 people show up. There were cars parked everywhere, and 1,500 paid the $30, but not everybody did. My neighbors, that's the only thing they could remember was that day where 5,000 people showed up. Of course, it wouldn't have been like that if we opened it to the public, but they didn't know that. So my neighbors beat me up, and that when I get to heaven, I'm going to say, God, I thought that's what I'm supposed to do.
No, but you'd keep.
I did my best. That's what I said in my book. Somebody said, why'd you build Dean Gardens? I said, I did my best to build something that could be enjoyed and create revenue for charities. So
do you think it's important for companies and even philanthropists to have that servant's heart and that spirit of giving for the community?
I personally do, but a lot of companies aren't that way at all. So, but when I lecture, first of all, I hope these young people understand what an entrepreneur is, and second, they can think about starting their own company someday, and third, they can think about having a corporate culture that would be similar to mine. And I think we had the best corporate culture in the business at the time.
So
Chick-fil-A was the other Christian company in Atlanta. They have a good corporate culture too.
They do, and they've really worked hard to maintain that, which is amazing.
Yes.
So can folks get the book, the Dean's Gardens book, anywhere?
Oh, I was going to tell you the story. When I wrote the book, it was the side that I wrote myself was SAT, success ain't test, or how I grew up happy and successful in SAT score 750. I wrote that book. I went to several publishers to get it published. Everybody turned me down but a guy named Victor Oliver. He had published A.L. Williams' book, who I love his book, by the way. He's great. And Truett Cathy's book. And he came back a month later and said, Larry, your book is neither Christian or secular. It falls in between. I told you I come down hard on the overemphasis of the SAT. Not the SAT, but the overemphasis. And he said, if you'll consider hiring a Christian writer, I'll consider publishing it. He recommended this writer from California. I hired him. He reorganized my book, added a lot of little cute sayings to it. A year later, I gave the manuscript back to Victor. And a month later, he called me. He said, I liked your original manuscript better. I said, Victor, what can I say? This is the guy you want me to hire. So then we were having events. We had 91 weddings and 75 charitable fundraisers at the house, and people were asking for literature. So I decided to publish the book myself.
Good for you.
And this was the experience. I went to publishers that publish books, and I was going to publish 10,000 books. I said, what would it cost me to publish 10,000 books? The first quote was $200,000. I said, well, that's $20 a book. I said, what would it cost to publish 50,000 books? $200,000. It didn't matter once those presses get going. So I published 50,000 books for the same price it's going to cost for 10,000 books. And I gave most away, donated them to charities when they had the fundraisers at Dean Gardens. And when I moved to Florida, I literally threw away 7,000. I just didn't have any place to store them.
Oh, my goodness.
So you can't really get the book unless I give it to you. So I kept about 400 of the books.
Well, I am grateful to have a copy of it. And I appreciate you coming in to tell your story.
I'm glad to do it.
So you guys can hear more about Larry's story if you see our upcoming issue of Ormond Beach Living Magazine. Or if you're lucky enough to find a copy of Dean Gardens, you can learn more about all the amazing things that he's been doing in his life. But you still got a lot more to go, right?
Oh, well, not a lot.
Quite a bit. But we do want to thank you for coming in. And
My pleasure, Danny. Nice
totally
to be
fascinating.
with you.
You too. We do want to thank WNZF News Radio, Flagler News Weekly, the Vigilante Philanthropists, Massage by Natalie and Company, and our Benjamin Moore Paint Store here in Palm Coast for sponsoring our show. And we will catch you guys next weekend. Bye.